Hello YouTube, me again. Sorry for the delay, I've been sick recently, unfortunately again, and I've been busy working, but I'm coming at you with another deck profile, this time for a dead game, Buddyfight. I miss this card game very much, and I have a lot of Buddyfight decks still in my collection. Some were donated to me by my friends when they quit when the game died and they quit, and some were just decks I've had updated for a long time. And with 10th anniversary coming out, I figured a lot of players might want some updated decks. And there isn't a lot of Buddyfight deck profiles on YouTube, I've noticed. So I figured I own so many decks, might as well give players some reference text or like some bases for them to build their own decks. And I'll start with one of my favorite decks. These sleeves were gifted to me at a regional from a good friend for my birthday because the regional was on the same day. We'll start with one of my favorite but most toxic decks, Plague. I am a Magic and Ancient World main and Danger World. I guess Danger, Ancient Magic, and Cotton World are my favorite worlds. This is my buddy monster. This is Ursinius. I've had this deck since I quit the game in Triple D and came back in X2. My friend got me back in. This is the buddy, Ash and Death Sorcerer Ursinius, and just your generic Magic World flag. Kind of wish we had one with Grimoire on it, but we do not. And there's the buddy right there. We'll start off with the monsters. We're not going to start with the buddy first, just because I'm going to go backwards. We got my former buddy. We got the one of Ash and Death Sorcerer Ursinius. He has Overkill, pay 2 life during your main phase, get 6 gauge. And this is important. Call cost is put 2 plagues from your drop zone, up to 2, and then pay 2 gauge. So you can't pay the 2 gauge first and then put the spells in there. You have to put them in first, because it comes afterwards. And yeah, we have the buddy rare. Had this for a long time. So that's the buddy rare copy, and buddy is Ash Auto DD Sorcerer, and that was Ash and Death. Then we have the one from I believe Buddy Lineage. I forget. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's basically the same as this one. He except he has a size reduction ability, and he lets you cast spells. He also has double attack, Soul Guard. I honestly forget what his other ability is. I think it's just reduced. Yeah, it's just reducer. He's just a size 0, and he can cast spells like this one. So it's a 1-2 split. Then we have 3. This one might be the one from Buddy Lineage. This one might be Blazing Overclash, actually, or vice versa. This is the... I played 3 of this one. This could also be the buddy if you want it to be. I just think that one's better, personally speaking. We play 3 copies of him. This one searches the item. It also turbos your soul and gives you 2 life. He also has double attack and Soul Guard. And then we play my favorite. I think this one's Overkill is the best one. We play the buddy. 4 copies of him. 4 copies of the buddy. His Overkill is discard a card, add 3 plague spells from your deck to your hand. He also gives you a gauge and burns you and gives you a life when you cast a spell. So that's it for the monsters. That's a very low monster count. We're not running any other ones. Nothing at all. We're not running any other monsters because... it's a turbo Plague, and I'm not gonna lie to anyone, Plague runs a lot of spells for obvious reasons. I will say that I do not believe we are updating this with 10th anniversary, mostly because we didn't really get anything. I do not run the Rebi. If you wanted to run the Rebi, I'd probably drop the original. I just think his Overkill still comes up a little more, and I don't really think the Rebi is just... I haven't really even tried it. I just don't think it does enough to justify it. And I'm not sure what I'd want to do with it. I'd need to try it out more. Personally, I think you can skip the Rebi for this deck. There's a reason it's $1. We play 3 of the item. I think 3 is the perfect number. 2 is too little. 4 is too many. 3 is it's searchable. You want to see this or your deck does nothing. This is part of your win con. This card... Most of this deck is actually still on TCG Player for a reasonable price. I think it's just the book and the great spell that are not available for sale. Everything else is relatively cheap, and the SP and stuff has been bought out finally. But if you wanted to pick up Plague, you could probably proxy the rest of it and pick up the deck for a decent low price. But yeah, well, the book is basically, you want to have, the win con is, we'll show you later, but you rest the book and you get a life by putting a spell in there. If you have 3 or more at the start of your turn, you draw a card. You want to get at least 8 stuff in your soul. That's it. Now we'll move on to the spells. We'll start with set spell. I run 1 copy of Circle of Reservoir. 1 copy of that. This card is One of the cards I'll normally search if I don't already have it in my starting hand, it gets you a gauge every time you use a spell, and also reduces power and crit of your opponent's stuff, so it can be used defensively. In combination with your buddy, you can burn them and get 2 gauge, kind of set up your win condition, which we will get to. Which, if you don't know what Plague's win condition is, it is the ultimate great spell, World Pandemic. I also find it funny that this came out right before the pandemic. Kind of ironic. But yeah, next I play, you can probably cut this down, but I play 4 copies of Infectious Hazard. Basically, it makes it so your spells can't be negated. So you're going to play unimpeded. And this also, when you cast a Plague spell, put the top once per turn. I believe it's per copy. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a while. I normally only have 1 in the field. But it's when you cast a spell, reveal the top card of your deck, and if it's a spell card with Plague in its attribute, it goes to Soul. That is another reason why I like this deck, and I don't like support for this deck. For the reason of, if it's not a Plague card, it slows down your game plan, at least in my opinion. So you want all your spells to be Plague, because you are gambling with not only that card, but other cards want your stuff to be Plagues. Then here we have the win condition of the deck. But, well, one of them, you could also burn your opponent and just stall them out with all the life gain you do. I've actually, the last 4 games I played with this deck, I've actually won by burning my opponent and just gaining ridiculous amounts of life and resources. And I was 1 gauge short each time to do this. Most of the time I have too much gauge, but it was weird. Untap is weird sometimes. And IRL too. But I had 4 of the burn card, and I just burned them out. Which we'll get to that. But this one is pay 6 gauge. If you have 8 or more cards in the soul of your item, you may close your opponent's flag, and that means to flip it face down. Meaning that they have no text on their flag anymore, and they are not able to play any monsters, and they have, basically their deck is not functioning anymore. It's basically an auto win that takes a lot of setup, but with the way this deck is built, you can most of the time get it on turn 2 if you go first. And the slowest is normally turn 3. But Buddyfight is a very fast game, so it's nice that we can do it at least on turn 2. You just got to know exactly what you need. Next, we'll play 3 copies of the Searcher. I think 4 is too many. 3 is just fine. It lets you add any copy of a monster from your deck to your hand or item. So this is another way to get your item. We have 3 copies of this and 3 copies of the Ursinius. This also can search the Ursinius that can search that. But it costs the gates. I think it's good to have. You don't always go into this spell, but if you have it, you have it. It's a nice searcher. Moving on, one of my favorite spells. 4 copy of Godspeed Learning. Great spell. You gauge and draw once per turn, and then if you have a Plague with 3 or more soul, you get 2 life. Pretty self-explanatory. Like I said, there's a lot of spells in this deck. Then we have the most important card in the deck for this variation. We have 4 Great Spell Incubation Period. This is why we're running so many spells. When you play this card, reveal the top 2 cards of your deck. If they're spells, they go into the book. And that will help you turbo it really fast. You want to have as many of that as possible. Next, we are running 3 copies of Epidemic Outbreak. This is basically just another way to get gauge, life, and it gets you back through your Siniuses you've lost. Kind of just lets you recur the one you're missing. So sometimes you'll charge a bunch and your Sinius will get trapped in gauge, or you'll have your great spell win condition in your drop zone, and you'll need to get it back with the other 2 Ursiniuses. Then we play my favorite card, Moxitoxin. This is a card normally I'll search out. I was running 1, but I bumped it to 2. I just really love this card a lot. It's just probably my favorite spell. It just literally says get 2 gauge and gain 2 life. So with Ursinius, you're getting 3 life and 3 gauge. And so that's basically setting up your thing. You can only cast it if you have a Plague on your field. And if this card's in the soul of a Plague, its abilities cannot be nullified by your opponent's card effects, which I honestly forget that some of these effects sometimes, because normally you turn the flag face down and they don't actually pop your item. But when they do, that card will come up, and it has. Next, we are running another one of my favorite cards. Which is another card that works in the soul, but is also our best defense card. Great Spell AT, Solution AT. This is the card that I've been winning with by accident. This is kind of like your other win condition, but it's also your shield. This card is basically nullify the attack, and if you have 3 or more plague in your, basically goes into soul, and if you have 3 or more, draw. And at the start of your turn, if it's in the book, you burn your opponent for damage. So accidentally, I've been having all 4 in my soul, just from drop and all the costs I've been doing. And then I would burn my friend for 4, and I ended up winning before I could cast the spell. It's just your shield. It's basically your shield and draw. Next we have, I do not know how to pronounce this disease at all. Do you know how to say this, babe?
I'm gonna give it a shot. Dysautonomia?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
It's some kind of disease, if you know. Tell me how to pronounce it. But basically, this card is pay 1 gauge for this turn. All your opponent's cards lose a critical, which is pretty good defensively. And it's in the stall of your book. At the start of your turn, you gain a life. So your goal in this deck is just to survive as long as possible and close their flag so you auto-win. And it's really hard with a lot of the future card Buddyfight FDKs and all that stuff running around, but this deck does gain a lot of life, and it does turbo pretty quickly. So it's a fun deck. I think this deck is still fun, and it's very toxic when it goes off. But it's definitely a deck that I think is more fun for the player, because it's fun to work towards that goal while your opponent is suffering. And they're just they don't want you to do it. They're going to beat you out of it. Then we have my favorite promo. I run 3. I used to run 4, Infector. And this card, counter, choose a card in your field. It cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. And then this card goes into the soul of a card in your field of an item. And then at the start of your turn, you can put a card in the drop zone to your gauge. This is basically another way to protect your card as well as turbo your soul and your gauge. Very important. Then we run a card that I overlooked originally when I was building Plague. I think I started running it more in Ace, which I kind of regret. But I overlooked it because I didn't have any copies. I didn't even see this card get revealed. But this is my favorite card to use against Crew Trooper, Folktale. What's another good example? Chaos, Garga, Athora, Rebi, specifically. And just anything that likes to call by card effects. This is my favorite card. If I'm fighting something like that, I am searching this card. Oh, I see. I need a new oversleeve here. Ooh, I don't like that. Actually, that's not too bad. Anyway, but yeah, this is Enigma Virus. It basically stops your opponent from calling with card effects, and it's been a while. Let me reread the second effect. This card in the Soul of Plague cannot be put to drop zone by your opponent's card effects. When a soul from a plague item on your field, when a soul is put from a plague on your field to the drop zone by your opponent's card effect, if this card's in the soul, so basically, if your soul is dropped by any means, this will burn them for 1, and this card itself can't be dropped from the soul, which is pretty good. It means you always have at least 1 soul. And then we play my former favorite, because we got Telecure in Ace, Magic World Generic, Narcolepsy. Love the spell. Just board rest. And it can also be basically, I believe, free. Yeah. Discard a card, and it's if you have enough cards in your book, and it's free. It's also pay, otherwise it's pay 3 gauge and rest all cards. It's a plague spell, it's a board rester, and it's just a really generic card. This is not one deck I have a sideboard for, at least anymore. I probably did at one point, but it got dismantled for other decks I took to tournaments. But that was the Plague deck, one of my favorite feature card Buddyfight decks. Really love it. As you can tell, I have the Buddy Rare and the SP. Probably one of my favorite magical decks. I plan to do a video for the other ones very soon. Probably do Sync next, then Wizard FTK, and probably Shadow Shade. So stay tuned to that. I will be posting some 10th anniversary stuff if I manage to get my hands on it. And thank you for watching. If you have any suggestions, please leave them down below. Ciao.